Hey, Asa, is that how you say your name?
Hey, it's actually Asa.
Hey, Asa, nice to meet you finally. I'm gonna give it a few minutes before to let people roll in, and then we can get started. Thank you so much for joining us.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
Hey, James, we're going to give it another minute to allow people to join the space, and then we can get started.
But by the way, Asa, I really enjoy the articles you've written. They're very thought provoking, and the topics cover some really interesting things that are happening in Web3.
Thanks, James. Um, yeah, there's obviously an endless number of interesting concepts in Web3 and crypto, and there's there's no shortage of article pitches and ideas as a result.
But how do you keep up with all these new developments? Like, it seems like any one area, like SBTs, you could really go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, I think keeping in mind that at Ad Age, we have an audience, and making sure that the stories that I write continue to cater to them in the ways they care about. For example, um, as we'll talk about momentarily with SBTs, there's a whole related topic of decentralized society, which is super interesting, and I could have gotten into, but um, you know, I decided early on that our readers probably wouldn't care that much about it, or at least right now. So I wanted to deliver the concept of SBTs first, and illustrate what they could mean for marketers before doing a story on decentralized society.
Yeah, makes sense. And I feel like this topic we're going to be talking about SBTs, it's got so much potential. I mean, it just really blows my mind to think about how big SBTs can become. And, we've prepared some really great questions for you. We've done a lot of homework in getting ready for this event, and I think it'll be a really fun conversation.
Great, yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. And I agree. I think it's a really cool concept, and something that honestly isn't that far away from becoming a popular use case if enough people can sort of be convinced of um, of how it can be used.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'm going to hold back on any further comment because then it will go into the questions. So I'll just hang tight for a moment.
Yeah, I'm just gonna start. It's very low turnout, but I think I think a lot of the crowd is at another space probably. But let's get started. Anyways, this space will be recorded and posted on our podcast, which is very popular right now. So with that, I'm going to introduce ENS Academy first. ENS Academy, for those who are joining us for the first time, our mission is to accelerate the adoption of ENS worldwide. We bring ENS experts and entrepreneurs to share their knowledge with the global community. Our goal is to educate, support, and empower anyone who can benefit from this technology. We believe ENS to be an open public utility that belongs to the community. ENS Academy aims to be the place where we can all learn the fundamental skills and possibilities of ENS. We hope to provide focused interviews and content that will add value. And today we have Asa Hyken, who is a tech reporter at AdAge, covering the intersection of Web3 and marketing, including crypto, NFTs, and the emerging metaverse. His stories have covered ENS domains, how brands should approach DAOs, as well as marketing strategies from the top crypto exchanges and how they adjusted during the crypto winter. He wrote very thorough articles and thought provoking articles about ENS and SBTs and DAOs. I linked in the tweet his articles for everyone to go ahead and take a read. And today, what we will be covering is soulbound tokens and how that will intersect with ENS potentially. But we really want to break down the concept of soulbound tokens because it's such a new concept and with so much potential. Welcome, Asa.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Real quick, how should I refer to you as?
Oh, I am 7147, 7147.eth. That works. My name is Musa. That also works.
Gotcha. Okay. Thanks for having me, Musa.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much for donating your time. Um, let's just start with talking about what are soulbound tokens? If we can just break that down.
Sure. So, a soulbound token is a non-transferable digital certificate that verifies a credential. So what that essentially means is it's an NFT that lives on the blockchain, but cannot be transferred. And its purpose is to verify that some credential, whether it be a recommendation or a medical record or whatever, it verifies that that credential is owned by you and was given to you. Um, and so these obviously differ from NFTs in very clear ways, but the main purpose, I think, of an SBT is sort of bringing more real world use cases into the sort of non fungible token technology.
And that's built on the Ethereum, or it could be built on multiple chains, right? So, um, what's the history of soulbound tokens? I know Vitalik wrote a piece on that. He introduced the term, right? He coined the term.
Yeah, he did. And to answer your first question, it could definitely be soulbound tokens could definitely exist on other blockchains. It's just mainly been talked about with regards to Ethereum. But yeah, Vitalik, and well, I guess he initially conceived the idea in a blog post like a while back. Maybe it was January of this year. Um, and he was sort of just going on about like his obsession with World of Warcraft and how in the game there was this concept of soulbound items, which are basically rewards that you can gain access to not by finding them or buying them, but by simply being awarded them. And so basically applying this to sort of more crypto focused ecosystem, him and a few others wrote a paper earlier this year on the use cases of soulbound tokens and formally introducing that soulbound item concept to blockchain and what it would look like to have these tokens that can say something about you but are fundamentally different from NFTs in that they can't be speculated upon and they can't be traded. So he came up with the concept earlier this year.
A,
Yeah, go ahead, James.
a quick follow up on that. Is it easy to have SBTs on other layer ones?
I imagine it would be just as easy to have it on other layer ones as it would Ethereum. What there needs to be um, firstly done is sort of uh, that standard needs to be set. How we have different token standards on Ethereum currently for non-fungible and fungible tokens. Um, there isn't. I'm not aware of one that is specifically geared towards SBTs at this point, but it could be made once people sort of decide what the technical details of the SBT would look like. But that could definitely be recreated on other layer one blockchains that utilize a variety of token standards.
Got it. Thanks.
Yeah, I really like your article. It's so thorough and it discusses how SBTs will change the way brands interact with their audience and community, how even it'll revolutionize the way we do business and how people can build their portfolio because everything will be verified, all your credentials, certificates. It's very, very exciting. Can you tell us a little bit more about your article? Maybe break down the major points before we go to the prepared questions.
Sure. Yeah. Well, thank you for those comments. Basically, what I set out to do in this story is explore some of the use cases that Soulbound tokens could have in the ad industry, but they really carry over to essentially most other areas of business solely because every line of business requires trust. It requires trust between parties, and to a certain extent, short of calling up every single person involved in issuing some credential, parties can't verify that um, the company or the person they're dealing with is precisely who they say they are, or who has accomplished precisely the things they say they have accomplished. So, um, in marketing, the real use cases are um, firstly that sort of process of deal making between parties. So in marketing, there's agencies dealing with brands and tech companies dealing with agencies and tech companies dealing with brands and platforms in between. So there's a lot of different uh, parties at play that require a lot of trust between them in order to function. And with SBTs, that level of trust could significantly be eliminated because for example, let's say a brand is looking for an agency, and it wants to find an agency that's really performed well in social media marketing. Instead of an agency coming out and saying, "Hey, these we did these numbers," and the brand having to trust that they did those numbers on previous campaigns, they could see from soulbound tokens that were issued by previous partners that, oh, they actually did accomplish those numbers, and here are more details on that, and here are actual recommendations that are tied to this token from that partner. And basically what this can expand into is in the deal making process between agencies, brands, and other partners, parties can create portfolios, very detailed portfolios that explain all previous successes and accomplishments, and can use that to strike deals in the future. So something that I sort of thought about, that I'm certainly not the first to think about this, but what I could foresee is a potential marketplace emerging that is basically a list of all the people and companies who have soulbound tokens, and partners who are looking for new partners can search this marketplace by the issuer of an SBT, or by the SBT's rarity, or by the content of the SBT, um, in order to find partners who can verifiably show that they have done something, they've completed something. So the the implications in terms of deal making are really quite clear. Um, Outside of that, you know, there's a another use case for soulbound tokens being used between a brand and consumers. I think one of the most interesting parts of SBTs is that, you know, they can be programmed very differently. I think it'll be interesting to see how token standards are developed, because um, that will obviously determine, you know, what an SBT is allowed to do. But I could foresee different kinds of SBTs existing that offer different kinds of value exchanges that brands can have with consumers, specifically with regards to privacy. Digital privacy is an area that is super important, but is also becoming increasingly important to mainstream audiences. You know, we see this with um, Google will be deprecating third-party cookies soon, and Apple's ATT changes recently have put this into the spotlight. But essentially, neither of those major companies offer the kind of variety and nuance that consumers want with privacy. And with an SBT, you can sort of program the level of privacy um, depending on the token. So, for example, if you, let's say a brand does a campaign that issues a few different kinds of soulbound tokens, one would say, okay, by giving you this token, you're allowing us to have a certain amount of data of yours, but we will allow you to have an adequate amount of perks or token gated experiences. You know, that might be a good option for a user who is open to sharing more of their data. Whereas for consumers who are not open to sharing that much data, they can still take part in the engagement with this brand, but instead they might take a soulbound token that allows them to have a certain amount of experiences, but not as many, and therefore not give up as much data to the brand. So this idea of programmable privacy within the soulbound token is a very, you know, possible use case. But I think the underlying thread of you know, the use cases for soulbound tokens, not just in marketing but in business in general, is that it's moving it's moving um, blockchain technology the closer to like our real world lives. Like when we think of NFTs, you know, NFTs can be used in a lot of different ways, but right now the main way that NFTs are being used are either through the crypto domains, i.e., ENS, or through like art, you know, Bored Apes, Doodles, all that. And there's a big sort of like, oh, that's our digital lives. It doesn't really um, come into our physical lives. But as you can see with soulbound tokens, we're increasingly capable of putting real world things on the blockchain. And that's just to say that using blockchain technology, the benefits of blockchain technology, mostly with regard to permissionlessness, using that to sort of streamline the processes that we use in our physical lives. And I think Soulbound Tokens is just the next extension of blockchain sort of coming into contact with how we've lived before blockchain.
Wow, wow, you are just blowing my mind here. I was really excited about this event, and it's like taking this leap. A question on a follow up question. When you talked about how SBTs can facilitate deal making between businesses, can you unpack that a little bit? Like, I have a sense of what you're saying, but it's not yet sunk in, like exactly how that happens.
Sure. Yeah. So the deal making use case um, really hinges upon the idea of trust and how, trust is unavoidable. Leaps of trust sometimes are unavoidable in forming partnerships between companies, between people, whatever it be. I think that the idea of trust is sort of one of the main inspirations for cryptocurrencies, trying to eliminate that aspect of trust as much as possible from very important financial transactions. Um, with SBTs and deal making, the idea is that um, essentially SBTs become the credential that proves you did something in the past. So if you think about currently how deal making works, you know, what you typically have to send your resume or send, whether if you're a person, you send your resume, or if you're a company, you send a portfolio of your work and sort of the accomplishments that you've had because of your work. And all of that, while great and informative, is inherently biased because it is what you are saying about yourself. And Soulbound tokens can sort of eliminate more of this bias by bringing into the conversation your past relationships. And that's done by bringing into the conversation the soulbound tokens that those prior partnerships have issued a company or a person, um, because those are credentials. Those are what those are basically the fruits of your labor that you have, that you are now showing to other partners in order to get those deals. So basically, um, what a soulbound token can be used for in deal making is to verify that you completed or that you are who you say you are. And there isn't that level of, oh shoot, I guess we got to trust this guy or this company that they did this great on this campaign, or that whatever it is, it's, oh no no, look, they actually did do that great, look, we can prove it, because why would this previous company say they did it if they didn't? You're sort of, it's basically a streamlined way of source calling and vetting people and companies, but it's all right there for you. You don't have to do any of the work. It's compiled in that token.
That's amazing. I mean, it's hard for me to even imagine. Like knowing this, it's hard for me to think about that we're not using that yet, right? It's a natural evolution almost, because we see it. I work in Web 2, and we hired so many people that basically built fake resumes just to get the job, and there's really very little we can do to verify that they actually did what they claimed they did. So your idea of a marketplace where you can actually shop for kind of resources, and everything is verified on chain, because the token, the soulbound tokens are issued by the different organizations that they performed these jobs for. So it becomes like, oh, you have to build your portfolio from scratch now, and your reputation is what soulbound tokens you have on there. So that's really powerful. It's like you described it as like a dating app, and I really love the idea. I can't wait to see brands and companies to start adopting this. But can you tell us a bit more about like different use cases that you see soulbound tokens will be utilized other than this really great example?
Well, you mentioned that that companies and organizations can sort of vet that other companies or even employees aren't faking their resumes, but the road goes both ways. This isn't to be used as some like authoritarian uh, method of companies trying to like crack down on um, whatever like potential lying from potential employees. There's also the other way, which is employees or consumers verifying that companies are doing what they say they're doing. There's a really big use case here, for example, for sustainability initiatives. Every single company I know now essentially has these sustainability initiatives that have to do with decreasing carbon emissions or um, anything else. And they sort of say it and they announce it, maybe sometimes with a big nationwide or global commercial campaign. But then after that, you're sort of like, oh, I hope they're doing it. And it's hard to really um, it's hard to make sure that they're doing what they're doing. And, some public companies will address that in their earnings calls. Some will be very vague. If it's not a public company, it won't talk about it at all. So basically, what these soulbound tokens can do is, you know, let's say a company said, okay, for our sustainability initiative, we're going to create all these carbon credits. And where these companies, these carbon credit companies are going to be our partners. In order to show that they are doing what they say they're doing, those carbon credit companies can issue soulbound tokens saying, look, Honda did create this many carbon credits and they did plant this many trees or they did lower their emissions, and consumers can verify that, oh, they are doing what they say they're doing, and it isn't in a biased way because you have this company actually verifying it. So that's a use case that's just on the other end of that, trusting people, um, that or trusting people that they are who they say they are, but in a way that is uses a lot less trust. I also, I think that sort of stepping out of the realm of like what is possible very soon to something that could be possible down the road, um, you get the concept of decentralized society and soul wallets. Souls, SOUL, are basically wallets for soulbound tokens, and they differentiate from your regular crypto wallet that has your NFTs, things that are transferable. Um, and souls are essentially your portfolio of important things. They can be your medical records, they can be recommendations, um, they could be a will, you know, something that is says something personal about you that therefore you can share to whom you want, right? Um it's not like how crypto wallets exist today, whereas like anyone can go and see what you have if they like know your wallet. These these souls would be programmed with different levels of privacy, but they make it easy to share and easy to verify things, right? Instead of, having to send your medical records to your doctor through email or whatever it is, using a bunch of intermediaries that you may or may not trust, or even, having to print it out, let's say, and, you can lose it on the subway or something. Like there's a lot of steps to sort of worry about. Soulbound tokens in souls could very much allow you to share and have access to important credentials of yours, in ways that you can guarantee are protected, and in ways that you can guarantee won't be lost on the way to showing them to people, right? If you were to have a medical record, again, you aren't going to transfer it to your doctor because a Soulbound token can't be transferred, but you can grant them access to see it and to verify, oh, these are your medical records, yada, yada, yada. So I think that in this vision of decentralized society, you would potentially have a lot more important personal information existing as a token, but that isn't, while that could sound intimidating and kind of scary, like think about what the alternative is, what the current model is right now, right? It exists on your computer, which can be hacked very easily. You often send it over email or do even crazier things with it. Like, it's not as protected as you think it is. If anything, putting on the blockchain, granted, you know how to like operate on the blockchain, but putting on the blockchain would actually serve to protect it even more.
You said something that really distilled in my mind what the value of soulbound tokens are, which is when you said it's bringing blockchain into our real world lives, right? Like, and think of the endless applications of that. So you've got, your university credentialing, educational credentialing. You've got your certifications. You've got your career credentialing. You've got your medical records. You've got your driver's license, and I could go on and on and on. Um, is it possible SBTs could be a bigger use case than what we think of as NFTs? I mean, it just seems to me that this is something that's applicable to every single person. That it's that big of a use case.
I think that, it obviously depends on how comfortable, the regular person is to using the blockchain and using these tokens. I think it's important to first recognize that a soulbound token is essentially a non-fungible token, right? It's just using it's using the non-fungible token technology with a slight caveat, the non-transferability. It's using that, but sort of just expanding what it can be, right? Remember that an NFT is a file type. It's not the art, it's not the games, it's not even the actual domain. It's a file type that points to these things. And the sooner that people recognize that an NFT, like a JPEG, like a PNG, like a PDF, is just the thing that like encapsulates the real thing, then I think the more people would be comfortable with that, right? If we, let's say we, in however many years, we become more comfortable and start thinking of NFT or SBT, that extension as a more secure JPEG or a more secure file type. If that becomes the status quo, then I can definitely see these things being used, right? I think right now we're in a, a difficult situation because crypto and Web3 and NFTs are all fighting for the trust of people, right? And there's been a lot of bad actors. There's a big reason for skepticism, but the more that this technology can lean into the security underlying all of this, I think the possibilities are really endless for how integrated blockchain can become with our regular physical lives.
That's a very good point. Yeah, they are NFTs. So if it wasn't for NFTs, we won't really have this SBT concept and technology, and it's an extension of that. And it's really though different because it serves it's like this non-financial tool to create this social layer that we will all utilize to you know um, use technology to improve our lives, because today it's like it sounds more archaic after listening to this. I want to know a little bit about the timeline you think that adoption for this technology would take. Like how long until we see more companies or more organizations utilizing this?
Well, it's funny you say that because after this my story on SBTs was published, I drove home the point that like this is mostly conceptual right now, but a few companies reached out saying, "Hey, we're actually doing SBTs right now." I didn't really have a chance to look into them a whole lot, so I wasn't able to see how legitimate they were or what their purpose was. But you know, it's not like we're trying to put people on Mars with this technology, right? This can all be done pretty pretty soon. It just depends on the real question is how soon are people willing to adopt it, right? And that's going to take some time. That's going to take some time to audit which blockchains might be best for this to make sure that the companies who are perhaps helping create these tokens are legitimate. Like there's a lot of sort of red tape stuff on the way, but again, the technology is here. It's blockchain. It's developers. I'm sure if there's a developer listening in on this, they're probably like, yeah, I could probably like contribute to creating the token standard for an SBT. Like the technology is here. It's just a matter of you know are there going to be enough people who trust it in order to make its creation um, worthwhile.
Right, and Web2 companies would have to integrate with the blockchain, right? So they would have to, like, say, if it's Ethereum, they would have to learn about Ethereum, be comfortable with that, and then there's all this bureaucracy in these Web2 companies that everything just takes forever. Yeah, so but you're right, like the technology is here. I've already seen a couple of places where SBTs are being implemented, and it's very exciting. Um, James, do you have any more questions?
Yeah, I want to ask if you had to imagine what will be the top three or so use cases of SBTs, say in a 5+ year time horizon, what would you imagine would be like the top three or so use cases in a longer term?
Hmm. Um, well, I think the use case of you see marketing and brands are sort of at the forefront of companies and businesses and industries playing around with blockchain and these tools. And so I don't think it would be that surprising to see them playing with SBTs first. And so I think a use case within that may be um, especially possible is the idea of using SBTs to sort of like program privacy into tokens. I think digital privacy is just going to continue to be an increasingly hot button issue. And I think that consumers are going to be more willing to participate in soulbound tokens if they know that, hey, it's actually granting me a lot more privacy and more nuanced privacy. So I think the privacy implications of SBTs are a definite use case in the near-ish future. Um, Outside of that, I think I would push some of the more personal things a little further than that, than some other use cases. Right, putting your medical records on the blockchain. I think that would scare the shit out of a lot of people. Um, and so I'm going to say that those will probably not be as close to coming to fruition as some of the others, but in that case, maybe putting less personal information in on the blockchain via soulbound tokens could be in that 5 year radius. So, for example, maybe a college can put or a club at a college. Let's say there's a blockchain club at the University of California, Los Angeles, and let's say that people participating in this blockchain club have created events or done whatever. There's a leadership executive board. Maybe that club creates a soulbound token and issues it to the executive board so they can show, so the people on that executive board can show this to potential employers saying, hey, look, this is, I was the vice president of my blockchain club at UCLA, and I did these things, and I have these actual recommendations from other people in my club saying I did these things, and therefore this paints a much clearer picture of that credential than, you know, a random bullet point on a PDF CV, right? I think that that could very well be a use case. And so, what is that? That's two. Um, and I guess a third would be something that, you know, might also be a little further off, but I could see it being an important use case. Is so let's suspend our disbelief and say that instead of just a blockchain club at a college is issuing soulbound tokens, let's say an actual university is issuing soulbound tokens to their graduates, right? And it has their entire college experience sort of cited and attested on this token. And I can see, you know, let's say a historically black uh, university, let's say like Howard University, issues soulbound tokens to its graduates. Employers who want to increase their diversity, who want to have, you know, a more equitable workforce, they could potentially search for candidates that have this soulbound token. If that, you know, marketplace was in existence at that point, you could search for these people. And, you know, some people, like, there's also the possibility for negatively discriminating, right? Companies saying, oh, we don't want these people. But, you know, I hope that this technology can be used for actual good. And so in this way, you can search for people who graduated from these HBCUs, or people who graduated from high schools that, you know, didn't, that weren't, you know, some of these great academies in the Northeast, but were like, had more diverse backgrounds, or from places that aren't as represented at workforces. So I think that, you know, maybe beyond the 5 year, but still exciting, is that potential use case of SBTs being used to help increase diversity, you know, across uh, the labor workforce in a variety of businesses.
Yeah, just adding one thought to that. For me personally, what I imagine as being like a really powerful use case for SBTs in the near term, you know, would be the creator economy. So I just can imagine, you know, like hundreds of millions of people being a part of the creator economy, powered by the blockchain, powered by crypto, powered by layer ones, incorporating NFTs and very specifically SBTs, where you have all these people making a living that are getting to keep a much bigger part of what they're earning, and being completely, you know, free, so to speak, outside of, you know, the walled gardens that we know of today. And I see the SBTs playing a really crucial role in that, in terms of no, you know, like signaling what they've done, signaling their capabilities, and so on and so forth. So that's something I'm bullish about.
No, I think that's true, and it helps. Something that's working, that's just, you know, in the very basic framing of an SBT that's working in its favor, is this idea of moving away from pure financialization of everything, right? You can't transfer away these tokens. Um, you know, people can't speculate on the value of these tokens going up. While, you know, I understand that that is an important practice for specific instances, for, you know, an accomplishment that you did for the 1 million subscribers that you attained on YouTube. I think that, you know, you don't want to speculate upon that. You want to show that off and boast that and share that with other companies and potential partners. So I think you're absolutely right that, um, you know, allowing these tokens to sort of be used in a non-financial way could have a lot of big impacts for creators and people who aren't just wanting to financialize everything that they've done.
This might be, I'm gonna kind of change course here. It might be a dumb question, but what if you lose your wallet, right? Like, can you tell us a little bit about the technicality of this technology? Like, I know it's soulbound to you, but really you need a wallet to hold it, right? So tell us a little bit more about that.
Um, yeah. So you mean like if like your soul wallet was lost, or if you somehow compromised it. So I think this was addressed in that paper that Vitalik and co wrote. And I think the solution was that you could potentially create out of soul wallets sort of a network of soul wallets. So, if you have your medical records on your in your wallet, they are somehow tied to the soul wallets of your family or of people that you explicitly said you trust, maybe best friends, maybe parents, whomever, spouses. And because of your ties with these wallets, they could verify that, oh, that wallet is his, or he owns these Soulbound tokens. Like, I'm not completely sure of the actual steps you would have to take, but the idea is that your Soulbound, your soul wallet wouldn't exist just floating by itself. It would sort of have a network attached to it, so that if something did happen to it, you could have people that you very much trust attest that these things are yours, and that you know um in case you lost it, like, you can reclaim it. Like, I think that there's potential to sort of solve that issue that is right now with most crypto wallets, which is, oh yeah, if something happens, if you get logged out and you don't know where your seed rate is, you're fucked. Like, I think there's potential to sort of combat that in a very productive way with this, well, by allowing like a network to be tied to your soul.
Right, right. Or maybe for organizations, it'll be your KYC with them. They might issue you a replacement soulbound token to your second wallet or something. But so I know with ENS, right, people can now use a name for their wallet and build a brand around that name. So basically, if you look me up, then 7147, then you'll see all my NFTs, but then you'll be able to see my portfolio of soulbound tokens. So, if you have anything to say about like the intersection between soulbound tokens and ENS, that would be also valuable.
Yeah, well, I think that ENS, you people are starting to think of these, your ENS domain as sort of being this fundamental identity in Web3. And if that can sort of encapsulate your identity, then I totally foresee specific soul wallets existing within that domain, right? Like, I think that, I'm not totally sure in what direction ENS domains are going in terms of like how people will be able to um, to browse different people's wallets and sort of see someone's domain and what's inside. But I could foresee a future in which you click on someone's domain and you see their visible assets, such as NFTs and whatnot. But then there's some gray area where it's like, oh, if that domain, say ensacademy.eth, has granted James the permission to see some of these soulbound tokens and some of those credentials, then you could see that. But if I went onto your crypto domain and viewed your profile, I couldn't see those tokens because I don't have permission. So I could see it really tying into, the idea that ENS and these crypto domains are forming your Web3 identity. Um, and again, the nuances and privacy and programmable features in these SBTs could allow for, a lot of different um, a lot of different methods and varieties of security, depending on who you trust and who you're willing to give permission to see your assets.
Yeah, that's really good answer. I look forward to ENS kind of working for that vision. I have a question from the community, and by the way, for the audience, if you have questions, you can request now. We're coming at time. There's probably 8 minutes left for the space, but I have a question about, and from your reading Vitalik's paper, would there be a specific naming mechanism for the soulbound tokens, or would it be just like random names given by the organization itself?
Naming, and what do you mean by naming? Like name, like
Yeah, like how with ENS we have like .eth and we have ENS Academy.eth. It's 1-to-1 right now. There's never going to be another ENS Academy.eth. But with soulbound tokens, I'm assuming that's the naming mechanism will be just whatever is given by the organization. So like the title of this token itself, right? It's going to need a title.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I think that that would depend on the issuer, and that's why I think it behooves any company and any organization to really understand and start learning about blockchain. You don't want to issue an SBT that the title just like doesn't match the credential itself. It needs to be thoroughly um, matched with whatever it's pointing to. And, perhaps there could be a method of renaming that once it's in your wallet, but um, you can't edit the content because that's already on the blockchain and that's been issued to you. You can't that's immutable. But as for the actual name of that token, um, I think it would make the most sense, if the University of Michigan was issuing a token for graduates of its undergraduate program. It would say something like it'd be a title like University of Michigan 2023 diploma, and then you click on that and it starts going into a lot more detail about what that actually means and what the majors were and what the extracurriculars were. So I foresee definitely like a need for responsible naming on the part of the issuer.
Perfect. Thank you, Asa. And James, I believe you have a couple of really good questions still left in your question list. One of them about the opportunity we have to benefit from SBTs. Can you go ahead and ask a bit more about that?
Yeah, so basically, um, it's clear that, in my mind, that SBTs are going to have a massive impact, not just in Web3, but in Web2 as well. And it goes back to the way you distilled it, which is it's bringing blockchain into our real lives, which has not happened so far, right? And so, how can we, like, what are some opportunities you see that people kind of look at or explore further with SBTs?
um, I think familiarizing yourself with um, the basic use cases, the basic purpose of like an NFT, familiarizing yourself with the basic purpose of blockchain technology so that you understand an SBT. you know it's kind of Vitalik's fault at this point for giving it such a crazy name, Soulbound Token. It sounds like witchcraft, but it's not that crazy, right? It's not like, it's taking a part of your soul and putting it on the blockchain. It is pointing to a credential that is secure because it's on the blockchain. It's just putting it in a more secure file type. So I think that familiarizing yourself with what these tools are actually doing versus what plenty of people and media claim they're doing, that's important. And another thing that you could do is um, read that paper that I think it's called. I can't remember, but read the paper that Vitalik wrote. It's called like Decentralizing Society, or something like that. It's long, but it's very informative, and it gets to the. It really, I think, does an excellent job of touching on one of the core elements of SBTs, which is the imaginativeness of the possibilities. Right, Vitalik goes on and on and on about how we could do this, and he sort of fights with himself on, well, that could raise these issues, but it's really a topic that is just full of potential use cases, and that paper is just a primer on sort of what may be possible, and not only solutions but potential issues that then must be solved by later technology um, that can be birthed by soulbound tokens.
That's awesome. The way you understand this technology is just so deep. I really want to get there myself and kind of extrapolate. But thank you so much, Asa. We're gonna, and for the audience, please go ahead. I pinned some of Asa's articles up there. They're really good. Please give him a follow. Check out the Adage, the website that he publishes articles on. It's full of really good information about the metaverse, Web3, ENS as well. He wrote a great article on ENS. We really recommend it. And now we're going to move on to questions from the audience. George, go ahead.
What's going on? Hey, thanks for having me. Quick note for Asa. If Soulbound is cringy to you, which is also to me, there's also account-bound tokens or non-transferable tokens, which I think are both better than Soulbound. When I read Decentralized Society, I was in the same way. I'm like, okay, I never played Warcraft. I'm just not going to call it that. Anyway, beside the point, but we have alternatives. Yeah, I was curious for anyone who's able to answer, like, the idea of soulbound tokens has now been out in the Twitter sphere and in the world for 6 months, 8 months, whatever it's been. I'm curious what your thoughts are around, like, yeah, why is it I'm impatient. Why is it taking so long? Like, why aren't normal people using them yet? And if they are, what am I missing? And who should I be looking out for in the space?
Yeah, no. First of all, I agree with some of those other names. Those are way more. They make a lot more sense than Soulbound, and are less scary. I think that I think it was January when the paper came out, or maybe the first blog post came out. I think you haven't seen them yet because keep in mind that the timing of all this with regards to crypto hasn't been like excellent, but more importantly is I think blockchain, crypto, NFTs, all these communities move at the speed of light. You get some of the most creative, intelligent people who are just going on and on and on about, like, creating new things and trying to imagine new scenarios and whatnot. But regular society moves much slower and is still trying to wrap their heads around what an NFT is and what crypto is, And so I think that it's really not surprising that there's a huge lag. And I think that doesn't mean that this technology won't come to fruition later in time, but there needs to be so much education before that to happen. And so just because, Vitalik proposes these in this possible use case of blockchain technology doesn't even mean his head is there right now, right? I'm sure he's got a million other things, including the merge, which he's mostly concerned about, and same with a lot of other people in this community. I think I think right now, crypto and NFTs are sort of fighting for their lives in some respects. And so some of these more creative use cases and these expansive um, methods might be turned to when we're at a more comfortable place. But right now, I'm not totally surprised that, you know, these blockchain gurus and the people at the forefront of the industry aren't sort of like prioritizing it.
Cool. I appreciate that. And I was being just a little bit overly cynical. I'm actually working on EIP 4973, which is a countdown token standard in my startup OtterSpace, Little Shill. We're building Soulbound Tokens. So if you want to check it out, check out my bio. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you, George. Yeah, I'm gonna check it out. And with that, guys, we're going to end the space. We're at time. Thank you, Asa. This was so mind blowing. I'm going to listen to it again because there was a lot that was said that I'm sure I missed some of it. But thank you so much for joining us. We'd love to have you again on different Web3 topics as we grow together in the space. And please, guys, go ahead and give him a follow. Any last thoughts, Asa?
No, just thank you for having me on here. It was a lot of fun to, break this down. And I think, you know, some of the best parts of blockchain and crypto and NFTs and all of Web3 is just talking about potential use cases and imagining, that society's all on the same page on some of this and, moving society forward using that technology. So I think it's a lot of fun to be here and to chat about it. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. I absolutely agree. I love working this job with ENS Academy. Founding it was one of the best ideas we had, being James. So, all right, guys, we do have another space coming up next Monday, September 12th, with Slobo.eth. It's going to be about the tool they're building, which is like a Web3 chat tool for the ENS community. It's just you use your ENS username to log into this dApp, and then you can just chat with anybody in the community that's plugged in. So we'd love to see you there. Please go ahead and follow us. And James, any last words before we close up?
Just want to thank Asa for breaking down this complex subject into digestible chunks. I have a much clearer understanding. And like my co host, I plan on listening to this episode again to further ground the concepts. The great thing is, all of our episodes you can find on iTunes and Spotify, so listen to them at your convenience.
All right, with that, thank you guys. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everyone.